I believe when you say you did everything right, you performed, you pushed back at the right moments, you built presence and made it visible, and someone else got the role you always wanted. Here's the secret. What you didn't know is that decision was largely shaped before the job was even posted. In a conversation you weren't part of, could be about someone whose name had already been put in the room by the right person. That conversation is the part nobody puts in the career development book. The people who know about it are usually too busy being in those rooms. Welcome back to the Manhui Method. I'm Saeed Manhui. What I want to get into today is the layer of advancement that most people never find, which is how sponsorship actually works inside large organizations and why it matters more than anything else once you reach a certain level. Most people focus on performance because it's what they can see and control. But the problem is that at a certain point, performance becomes the baseline, not the differentiator. Everyone being considered for a senior role is performing well already. The thing that actually separates who gets considered from who doesn't is whether someone with influence has put their name into the right conversation. Here's how promotions actually work in most large organizations. The formal process, of course, exists. The job gets posted, interviews happen, a decision gets announced. But by the time any of that is visible to most people, the real decision is often already close to made. There are one or two names that leaderships has already started thinking about. Those names got there because someone with influence put them there. And they put them there long before the job even existed. That moment when someone says the right name to the right person happens in casual conversations, in hallway, in leadership meetings, in contexts that have nothing to do with the open role. It happens long before any formal process begins, and for most people, it happens without them knowing it, or it doesn't happen at all. Understanding that is the starting point for everything else in this episode. Allow me to introduce two characters here, a sponsor and a mentor. A sponsor is not the same thing as a mentor, and collapsing that distinction will cost you. A mentor gives you advice, helps you think through problems, and support your development. That's really valuable, but a mentor is completely passive when it comes to your actual advancement. On the other hand, a sponsor does something totally different. The sponsor tells someone else that you are ready. That sentence said to the right person in the right moment is what opened doors. Nothing else does it the same way. Here's something you need to know about your sponsor. A sponsor doesn't put your name in a conversation because they like you or believe in you as a person. They do it because you can solve something they need solved or a problem they're carrying, an initiative that has stalled, maybe a gap in the organization that keeps showing up. The sponsorship relationship is transactional at its foundation, and you should be comfortable with that. Once you understand it, your entire approach to finding a sponsor changes. You stop trying to impress people and start trying to find the pain. That shift is significant. Sponsorship built on personal rapport is kind of fragile because rapport changes. Sponsorship built on what you can solve is durable because it's grounded in something the other person actually needs. when you solve a real problem for someone with influence and you do it visibly and well, that person has a reason to speak for you. And it's not because they are generous. It's because advocating for you reflects well on their own judgment. In large, complex organizations, especially at senior levels, roles get created for specific people who solve specific problems at the right moment. For example, a new VP role appears not because it was on the roadmap. It's because the upper leadership realizes there is a gap that is costing them. And someone in their orbit already has someone in mind that could address it. The case gets made that the role should exist. And suddenly, there is an opening that didn't exist a month ago, now already shaped around one person. I've seen this happen many times in my career, and I've lived it personally. There are always exceptions and anomalies in large organizations. The person who gets a role created for them isn't always the most talented person in that organization. They are the person who solved the right problem for the right person at the right time and did it in a way that made the case for their own value obvious without having to make it themselves. That's the position you're trying to get into. Not impressive, not visible for visibility's sake, actually useful to someone who matters. Most people approach this backward. They try to build relationships with senior leaderships by being visible, doing good work, and hoping to get noticed. That's not wrong exactly, but it's incomplete in a way that leaves most of the work undone. The more direct path starts with understanding what the people above you actually need. Not what would impress them, but what would genuinely make their situation easier. I have an assignment for you. Start finding people in your organization whose opinion of you would actually change what's possible in your career. Then find the problems they are carrying that you're positioned to address and solve. Not problems at your level, problems at their level, where solving them would require someone to operate above their current expectations. When you find that match and you deliver on it visibly, the relationship builds itself. You don't have to engineer it. The work does it for you. There's a longer game underneath this that's worth understanding as well. Sponsors don't adopt people they've never seen perform under real conditions. They adopt people who have given them something to believe in, which means the preparation for sponsorship starts much earlier than most people think. Every time you take a clear position in a meeting, every time you bring something forward that others were avoiding, every time you handle something difficult in a way that someone above you can observe, you are building the foundation that the sponsor relationship actually forms on. Stop thinking about your relationship with senior people as networking. Start thinking about them as a slow, ongoing demonstration of your judgment. Every interaction is a data point. Every moment where you could have hedged and didn't, every situation where you brought a clear point of view when the room was waiting for someone to have one, those are the moments that matter. You cannot manufacture a sponsor, but you can create the condition where one decides you're worth it. The door into the next level of your career opens from inside. Someone on the other side has to decide you're worth reaching for the handle. What makes them decide that is not your resume, not your performance score, not your years of experience. It's whether they have seen enough of your judgment in enough situations that actually mattered to feel confident putting their own credibility behind yours. Here's where to start after this episode. Think about the senior people in your organization whose opinion of you would genuinely change what's possible in your career. I'm not talking about your direct manager. I'm talking about people above that. The ones who show up in conversations about direction and resources and who's being considered for it. Now, ask yourself honestly whether those people have seen enough of your judgment to form a real opinion. Not whether they know your name or your title, they actually seen you handle something that mattered. If the answer is no, that's a gap. It's not your performance, it's not your skill, not your work ethic. The gap between what you're capable of and who has seen enough of it to say so when it counts. That's what matters. Find the pain those people are carrying. Solve it in a way that is impossible to miss. Do it once well, and then keep doing it. Remember, the door opens from inside. Give someone a reason to reach for it. In the next episode, I want to get into something that affects almost every technical person in a technical career at some point. It's coming up soon. Don't forget, check out my book, The Last Human Software Engineer, available on Amazon. See you next time.